I'm about to show you the strangest agricultural mistake in American history. There is a vine covering entire hillsides across the South right now, swallowing abandoned barns, climbing 100-foot trees, turning whole forests into eerie green sculptures that look like the land itself has been draped in a blanket. People call it the vine that ate the South. It is one of the most hated plants in this country. And here is the part almost nobody knows. It did not sneak in. It did not blow in on the wind or hitch a ride in a shipment. The United States government deliberately planted it, promoted it, and paid farmers cash money by the acre to cover their land with it. There were clubs devoted to it. There was a man who went on the radio to preach about it. It was called a miracle crop. And then, within a single lifetime, that same government put it on the federal noxious weed list. This is kudzu, and by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how a plant went from national salvation to national enemy in about 30 years, why it grew the way it did, the honest truth about how much of the South it actually covers, because the famous number you've heard is wrong, and the part that will surprise you most, how to eat it, because this hated weed is genuinely edible in 3 completely different ways. And in one part of the world, it's a prized ingredient people pay real money for. But before any of that, I have to show you why America wanted this plant so badly in the first place. Because we didn't do this out of stupidity. We did it out of desperation. Picture the American South in the 1920s and 30s. Generations of cotton had been grown on the same ground over and over, with little put back into it. The soil was exhausted, and worse, it was leaving. Rain was carving gullies into fields you could lose a mule in. Topsoil that had taken thousands of years to build was washing off the hillsides and down the rivers in a single season. Farms were failing. Whole families were walking away from land that could no longer feed them. And in the same era, out west, the Dust Bowl was turning the plains into a sky full of dirt. America was, quite literally, losing its ground. And the federal government went looking for anything that could hold the soil down. Now, here's where the story really begins. And it begins earlier than you'd expect. In 1876, in Philadelphia, at the Centennial Exposition, the Great World's Fair celebrating 100 years of American independence. Japan built a beautiful garden pavilion there, and among the plants they brought was a vigorous climbing vine with broad leaves and fragrant purple flowers. Americans loved it. Gardeners took it home to shade their porches because it grew fast, smelled sweet, and made dense green cover in a single season. For decades, that's all it was, a charming ornamental vine. Then, in the early 1900s, a Florida couple named Charles and Lily noticed something. Their animals loved to eat it. They began promoting kudzu as livestock forage, selling plants by mail. And they weren't wrong about it. Kudzu is a legume, a cousin of beans and peas, and its leaves are genuinely nutritious feed. Cattle and goats will eat it happily. And then someone made the connection that changed everything. This vine grows explosively. It holds soil with a deep root system. And, being a legume, it does what legumes do. It pulls nitrogen out of the air and puts it into the ground, actually enriching the exhausted dirt as it grows. Read that list again with 1930s eyes. Fast cover, holds soil, feeds cattle, fertilizes the ground for free. To a nation watching its farmland wash into the sea, kudzu didn't look like a weed. It looked like a miracle. So the government went all in. The newly formed Soil Conservation Service began promoting kudzu hard as the answer to southern erosion. The Civilian Conservation Corps, those crews of young men put to work during the Depression, planted it by the millions. Across gullies and raw roadside banks and worn-out fields, and the government put money behind it. Farmers were offered payments per acre to plant kudzu on their land. You could literally be paid to cover your farm in this vine. And it wasn't only the government. There was a man named Channing Cope, a Georgia farmer and newspaperman who became kudzu's greatest evangelist, writing about it, broadcasting about it on the radio, calling it a miracle vine that would save the South. He founded the Kudzu Club of America, and it drew tens of thousands of members. Imagine that for a moment. A fan club with a national membership devoted to a plant you now curse when it swallows your fence. And the strange thing is that the affection never entirely died. Kudzu worked its way so deep into Southern life that towns still hold kudzu festivals. Artists photograph and paint those green sculpted hillsides, and the vine turns up constantly in Southern writing and humor as a kind of regional mascot. People love to hate it. It's the neighbor's dog that keeps getting into the yard, genuinely a problem, and somehow still part of the family. For a while, it worked exactly as advertised. Kudzu held the banks, it covered the gullies, it fed the stock, and then it kept going. Here's what nobody had properly reckoned with. In its native East Asia, kudzu is a perfectly well-behaved plant, kept in check by a cold climate in places, by insects and diseases that evolved alongside it, and by people who harvested it. Drop that same plant into the American Southeast, and you've handed it paradise. Long hot summers, generous rainfall, mild winters, and not one of its natural enemies anywhere on the continent. So it grew. Under good conditions, kudzu can put on something like a foot a day and run 60 feet in a single season. It climbs anything vertical: fences, poles, power lines, trees 100 feet tall. And once it's up there, it spreads a dense canopy over the top of everything and takes the sunlight. The tree underneath doesn't get eaten. It gets shaded to death and often broken under the sheer weight of vine. That's why kudzu-covered landscapes look so ghostly. Those green humps and towers are the shapes of trees and buildings that are still under there. And it doesn't just spread by seed. It spreads by running vine's root wherever a node touches soil. So a single plant marches outward year after year, throwing down new root crowns as it goes. Those roots are enormous. A mature kudzu root can grow to the size of a person and weigh hundreds of pounds, storing so much energy that cutting the vine back barely inconveniences it. That's why it's so brutally hard to kill. You can mow it, cut it, or burn it, and it simply comes back from that buried reservoir. The reversal, when it came, was almost comically abrupt. By the 1950s, the government had figured out what it had done. And in 1953, the USDA quietly removed kudzu from its list of recommended cover plants. By 1970, it was being formally called a weed. And in 1997, the plant America had once paid people to grow was added to the federal noxious weed list. In about 70 years, kudzu went from a foreign curiosity to a national hero to a federally listed menace. Now let me give you the honest correction, because this is where nearly every article about kudzu gets it wrong. You have almost certainly heard that kudzu covers 7 million acres of the South. That figure gets repeated everywhere. But researchers who have actually gone out and measured it argue that number is wildly inflated, closer to a couple 100,000 acres of genuine forest coverage, not millions. So why does the myth persist? Because of where kudzu grows, it thrives in exactly the disturbed, sunny edges you see from a car. Roadsides, highway banks, cleared right-of-ways, the margins of fields. So you drive through the South and it looks like the entire region is buried, when in truth you're seeing a dramatic green ribbon draped along the roads you happen to be traveling. Kudzu is a serious, genuinely destructive problem. It's just also the most photogenic weed in America, and it has a better publicist than it deserves. The damage that is real, though, is real enough. It smothers and kills valuable timber. It pulls down power lines and requires utilities to spend serious money every year keeping it off their infrastructure. It engulfs pasture and cropland. Estimates of the combined cost of lost productivity and control run into the hundreds of millions of dollars annually. And there's a quieter cost, too, because kudzu is a legume. It can serve as a reservoir for pests and diseases that then move into related crops like soybeans, which means a vine tangled along a field edge isn't only a nuisance to look at, it can be a standing threat to the farm beside it. So let me be plain. I am not here to tell you kudzu is secretly wonderful and we should all let it grow. It is an invasive plant that does genuine harm, and the mistake that unleashed it was a real mistake. But that is exactly what makes the next part so interesting. Because in Japan, China, and Korea, where this plant is from, kudzu was never a monster. It was a resource, and it's still used as one today. So let me show you the 3 completely different ways this vine is food. First, the leaves. Kudzu is a legume, and its young leaves and shoot tips are edible. They're treated much like any leafy green. The tender young growth can be used raw in a salad, and the older leaves are better cooked, sautéed or simmered like spinach or collards, or added to soups. As livestock feed, kudzu leaf is genuinely high-quality forage, which is precisely what those farmers were promoting a century ago. It has a mild green beany flavor, pleasant, unremarkable, and entirely edible. Second, the flowers, and these are the delight of the whole plant. In late summer, kudzu produces clusters of purple blossoms with a scent so strongly, like grape candy, that it seems fake the first time you smell it. Those blossoms are used to make one of the South's genuinely lovely regional foods, kudzu blossom jelly, a pink to purple preserve with a floral, grape-like flavor. People make syrup and candy from them too. There are Southern families who go out picking kudzu blooms every August the way other people pick blackberries. And third, the roots. And this is the one that will genuinely surprise you, because it's a premium product. Those huge starchy kudzu roots are the source of what's called kudzu in Japan, a fine white starch, painstakingly extracted by washing and settling it out of the pounded root over and over. Kudzu starch has been made in Japan for centuries, is regarded as a high-quality traditional ingredient, and is used to thicken sauces and soups and to make delicate traditional sweets. It is not cheap. Real kudzu is a specialty item that sells for a serious price per pound. And the plant gives up more than food. Those long, tough vines have been used for weaving for centuries. In East Asia, kudzu fiber was traditionally worked into cloth, cordage, and paper. And today, Southern basket makers prize the vines for exactly the same reason farmers curse them. They're strong, flexible, and endlessly available. Strip the leaves, soak the vines, and you have free basketry material by the truckload. It's a small thing, but it tells you something. Every part of this plant had a job in the culture it came from. It arrived here with all of those uses intact. And we adopted exactly one of them, covered the dirt fast, and then acted shocked when it did nothing but that. So sit with that irony for a second. There are Americans spending money to poison a plant off their fence line, while the same plant, half a world away, is dug up, processed with great care, and sold as a premium culinary starch. Now, this is the part you must not skip, because we're talking about eating something off a roadside. And there are three things that genuinely matter here. First, and most urgently, identification, because kudzu has a look-alike that will hurt you. Kudzu leaves are compound with 3 leaflets. And you know what else grows in exactly the same tangled climbing roadside masses across the South? Also with 3 leaflets. Poison ivy. This is not a theoretical risk. People reach into a kudzu patch and grab a handful of poison ivy every single year. So learn the difference. Cold kudzu leaflets are large, often 4 inches or more, usually with distinct lobes on the edges, and both the leaves and the vines are noticeably hairy. Run your hand along a kudzu vine, and you feel fuzz. Poison ivy leaflets are typically smaller, smooth or glossy, rather than fuzzy. With the middle leaflet on a noticeably longer stalk than the 2 side ones, and the vine, when it climbs, is covered in dense, hairy rootlets that give it a distinctive furry rope look. Kudzu also gives you 2 confirmations. Poison ivy never will. Those unmistakable grape-scented purple flower clusters in late summer, and the sheer size and vigor of it. If you can't tell them apart with total confidence, do not harvest. Leaves of 3 is not a joke. Second, where it's growing, kudzu is one of the most heavily sprayed plants in America. Highway departments, utilities, railroads, and landowners all treat it with herbicides. And the most visible kudzu, the stuff draped along the roadside where you'd naturally stop, is exactly the stuff most likely to have been sprayed and also to have spent years collecting vehicle exhaust and road runoff, so harvest only well away from roads, rail lines, and power line right-of-ways, and only where you know the ground hasn't been treated. Third, the law and the landowner. Kudzu is a federally listed noxious weed. Do not plant it. Do not transplant it. Do not move live root crowns around. And do not start a patch that's not just illegal in many places. It's genuinely irresponsible, and it is the exact mistake this whole video is about. Harvest from existing stands only, and get the landowner's permission before you go digging up someone's ground for roots. And one honest note on the medicinal side, kudzu root has a long history in traditional East Asian medicine, and that history is real and worth knowing. But traditional use is not the same as proven treatment. Kudzu root supplements can interact with medications, particularly things like blood thinners and hormone-related treatments, and nothing here is medical advice. Enjoy it as food. Talk to a doctor about anything else. With that settled, here's how to actually use it. For leaves, pick the young, tender growth at the tips of the vines in spring and summer. Wash them well, and cook them like any green a few minutes in a pan with oil and garlic is plenty, or throw them into a soup. For blossoms, pick the flower clusters at their peak in late summer, when the grape scent is strongest. Shake out the insects and steep them like a tea to draw out that pink-purple color and floral flavor. That infusion is the base for the classic jelly, set with the usual pectin and sugar, and it also makes a beautiful syrup. For the root, understand that you're signing up for real work. Kudzu roots are massive and deep, and digging one is a genuine job. Once you have it, you scrub it, pound or grate the pulp, wash the starch out in water, let it settle, pour off the liquid, and repeat that washing until what settles is clean and white, then dry it. That white powder is your starch, used exactly like cornstarch to thicken. It is a slow, old-fashioned process, and it is precisely why real kudzu costs what it does. And here is the honest limit, so nobody comes away with the wrong idea. Foraging kudzu will not control kudzu. You are not going to eat this problem into submission. A determined family with a lifetime of appetite would not meaningfully dent one hillside. What actually controls kudzu is persistent grazing by livestock, repeated cutting over years, and targeted herbicide work by people who know what they're doing. So don't frame this as heroism. Frame it honestly. This is one of the most abundant free foods in the American South. It's already here, it's already causing trouble, and you may as well know what it can do. Let me tell you what turned this around for me. I grew up seeing kudzu as scenery, the green blanket you drive past without thinking, the punchline in every joke about the South. I didn't consider it a plant so much as a condition of the landscape. Then one August I was walking a field edge and caught that smell. That ridiculous grape candy sweetness, and I actually stopped and looked at the vine properly for the first time in my life. Purple flowers, big lobed leaves, running everywhere. I went home and started reading, and what I found genuinely embarrassed me that this thing was imparted with hope, planted with tax dollars, celebrated by a national club, and then condemned. That in its homeland it feeds people and produces a starch worth good money. And that I'd spent my whole life driving past it without once asking a single question about it. I made a small jar of blossom jelly that year. It's the best conversation piece I own, and it tastes like grape soda made by a flower. Nobody who tries it ever believes what it is made from, and that reaction alone is worth the afternoon it takes. Let me answer the questions I know are coming. Is kudzu really safe to eat? The leaves, shoots, blossoms, and root starch are traditional foods in East Asia, and in parts of the South, the risks are misidentification, herbicide contamination, and location, not the plant itself. What about poison ivy? Both have 3 leaflets and grow in the same places. Check for kudzus, hairy vines, large lobed leaflets, and grape-scented purple flowers. And if you're not certain, don't pick. Can I plant it? No. It's a federally listed noxious weed. Never plant, move, or spread it. Does it really grow a foot a day? In ideal summer conditions, yes, that kind of growth is genuinely documented. Does it actually cover 7 million acres? Almost certainly not. Researchers who've measured it argue the real figure is dramatically lower. It's just extremely visible from the road. Can eating it help control it? No, grazing and sustained management do that. What does the jelly taste like? Floral and grape-like. And it's the reason most people become kudzu fans. And can I buy kudzu starch instead of digging? Yes, and honestly, for most people, that's the sensible option. So here's the whole of it. This vine came to America as a garden ornament, was seized on as the answer to a genuine crisis, and was planted deliberately, enthusiastically, and at public expense by a country desperate to keep its soil from washing away. It did exactly what it was asked to do, and then it kept doing it, because we'd handed a vigorous plant a continent with no brakes on it. Within a lifetime, the miracle crop became the most hated weed in the South, and all along, it's been food leaves you can cook like greens, blossoms that make a jelly worth driving for, and a root that yields a starch prized halfway around the world. It's a cautionary tale with a pantry attached, and now you know both halves of it. So tell me down in the comments, do you have kudzu where you live, and did you have any idea it was edible? And has anyone here actually made the blossom jelly? I read every single one. Next time, I'm going to show you another plant we imported on purpose. Praised as a wonder, and now spend a fortune fighting one that's growing along creek banks and roadsides across half the country, and is far more useful than anyone remembers. Subscribe so you don't miss it. And remember, the people who came before us weren't foolish. They were solving real problems with the knowledge they had. and the least we can do is learn from what happened next.